DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, we're not done. We're going to give you a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one show, one daily masterclass. Yes, all together. One daily masterclass that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is managing the grind. Yes, managing the grind. I am not going to tell you that there is not a grind. I'm not going to tell you that you can avoid the grind. No, what we're going to talk about here today is how you manage and handle that grind, because the grind is going to exist. And I'll tell you why in a moment. But before we get further into that, let me remind or inform everybody that I have a text message line where I want you to text me and tell me the best insight you got from today's masterclass. If you have a question or a comment or a concern about anything that you heard today, or something that you just want to follow up with me about, a question that you want to ask, something I could possibly help with, send me a text message at my number 305-384-6894. When you text me there and you are confirmed, not only will you get a response from me, I spend time responding to my texts every day, but you also will be receiving then my daily motivation text messages, which I send out every morning. So if you want to get that message that keeps you mentally on point, keeps you mentally focused every day, you can just text me and say hi, and you'll be able to get my daily motivation text. Or if you have a question or comment about anything you hear today or in any other episode, you can text me for that as well. That number again, 305-384-6894. Now, when it comes to the grind, I told you in episode 1261 that every job requires a grind. All right, so no matter what you decide to get involved in, what you do, there will come a point when you're going to realize that there is a grind involved in that job. And in episode number 1697, I told you about 3 different ways you can avoid grinding blindly forever at a job to make sure that you actually have a plan or a strategy, so that even though there is a grind involved, you know that grind is actually leading you to some outcome that you actually want, to where maybe you're not going to have to keep grinding forever. Again, that's episode 1697, that one. Both of those are linked down below in the show notes. Understand that no matter what job you do, no matter how good you are at it or how rewarding that job may be for you, not every day at that job is going to be smooth and fun and seamless. There will be some days where you're just going to have to push yourself through that day. There will be some times where things are just not clicking the way that you want them to click, but you still have to show up and keep doing what you had to do. There'll be times where you have to push and scrape, claw and grind your way through certain aspects of that work or certain periods of the work. And today we're going to talk about how you can actually handle those mentally, as well as mentally as the baseline. And when you have them handled mentally, you'll figure out what to do physically and tangibly. So let's get to it. Point number 1, topic once again, is managing the grind of any job. Number 1, when you have one of those days at work, and does everyone know what it means to have one of those days? Is there anyone? I don't think there's anyone listening to me who's never had one of those days at whatever job you have or whatever work you do. Everyone's had those days. You might be having one right now. Understand that having one of those does not mean that there's anything wrong with you, because this happens to everybody, as I just explained. Now, some of us are more open and honest about the fact that we are having one of those days than others are. Some people don't really talk about it when they're having one of those days. They just push their way through it, and that's just what it is. Some people, when they're having one of those days, they let everybody know about it. They tell the whole world, they post it on their social media. Maybe they try to take the rest of the day off. Maybe they kind of fall back and just say, you know what, I'm not going to work today. I'm going to just take the day off, or I'm just going to kind of halfway do this work and mail it in today. Some people are like that when they're having one of those days, but understand no matter how you choose to express it or not, everybody has those days. So when it happens, it doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you have done anything wrong. Being that some of us, again, are just more open about it than others. And some of us have higher highs and lower lows than others. Some people are just more on that even keel, to where whether they're doing great or they're doing terribly, that their energy does not go up and down with the results of their work or how they're feeling about their work. Whereas others, they, as we say, wear their hearts on their sleeves, wear their emotions on their sleeves. So if they're doing great, you can tell that they're doing great, and you know it before they're 2 blocks away. You can tell they're doing great. And when they're doing terrible, you know that as well, because they're telling the whole world about it and letting everybody know how they feel. And sometimes you can feel it coming off them even if they're not saying anything. Again, this is just the differences in human beings, but understand that we all have tough days. We all have rough patches in our work. So when you are experiencing one of those rough patches, don't beat yourself up about the fact that you don't feel amazing every single day, because you shouldn't expect every day to give you some perfect feeling. You're not going to be perfect every single day. And that's why we have this very concept called the third day. And I have the book right here that I'm holding up. This is the hardcover version of the book for those of you who are watching on video. If you have not claimed your free copy of this book yet, go to thirddaybook.com. The link is down below in the show notes wherever you are listening to or watching this. The subtitle is The Decision That Separates the Pros from the Amateurs. It's all about what you do when you have those third days, when you have those challenging situations, when you don't quite feel so excited about the work anymore, but you are still required to do the work. What do you do in those moments? The book, The Third Day, will help you understand what to do before you get to that moment, so you're already prepared for it before it happens. And this is what professionals do. Professionals always prepare for the situation before it happens. They don't try to figure out the situation when it happens. Point number 2. Today's topic today is managing the grind of whatever you are doing. Second thing you want to keep in mind is one thing at a time. When you're dealing with a grinding, challenging, not everything's going perfect type of situation, what you want to handle is not the whole situation or everything about it or what happened yesterday or what's going to happen tomorrow along with what's going on, everything you got to do today. You want to handle one thing at a time, because being that human beings have the limitation of only being able to focus on one thing at a time, and being that you only have 2 hands, most of us, you can only usually do one thing at a time. There's no real such thing as multitasking. When you think you're multitasking, what you're actually doing is task switching, giving a little bit of attention in quick spurts from one item to the other, and maybe switching back and forth. But you're not actually paying attention to 2 things at once. It's humanly impossible. So what you want to do instead then is focus on one thing at a time, so that you can give your complete focus just to that one thing, which means you will do that thing better because you're just focusing on just that one thing. Again, this is a human limitation. We do our best work when we're focusing on one thing at a time for an extended period of time. And secondly, you're not burning your brain out by going back and forth from one task to the other and one task to the other. You use up a whole lot of energy a lot more quickly when you are task switching, or what you think is multitasking, but it's actually not, than when you just focus on one task at a time. If you were to think about next time you catch yourself multitasking and you think you're doing it well, think of it like this. It's kind of like being in a vehicle and you keep putting the vehicle in drive, and then you go maybe 10 feet, then you put it in reverse, and you go back 10 feet. Then you put it in drive again, then put back in reverse, back in drive, back in reverse. And listen, if the car is healthy and well taken care of, the car will do what you tell it to do. It will go in drive and it will go in reverse. It will go forward and it will go backward. But you're burning out your engine and your transmission a lot faster than if you would just put the car in either drive or reverse and just move it forward for an extended period for whatever you actually functionally need it for, rather than playing around with your transmission. So it's the same thing with your human brain. Remember that life is lived one day at a time. Even when you're having a rough day or you're having a great day, it's still lived one day at a time. Work is done one project at a time. So focus on where you are currently in the moment and do what you need to do right now in the moment. And when you're done with that, then move on to the next thing. Often we as humans, we get overwhelmed because of our human tendency to, first of all, make the mistake of multitasking, and I can use air quotes when I say multitasking, because again, it's not a real thing. We think we're multitasking and we end up overwhelming ourselves because we're giving our brain too many things to do. Now remember, the human brain can only focus on one thing at a time. So if you give the brain 2 things to do, you're already doing too many. So that's one way that we overwhelm ourselves, by trying to do too many things at once. And the other thing that we do is we time travel. Time traveling means you're thinking about things that you're going to be doing in the future, or things that you know you need to get done that you're not doing right now in this moment. And then what is your brain doing? At that moment, you are mentally multitasking. Even though you might not physically be doing more than one thing at a time, you are thinking about something that you need to do in an hour, while at the same time, you think you're also doing the thing that you're doing right now. Well, you are, but you're task switching. You're mentally task switching between the future event and the current event, which means you are not giving your best full focus to the current thing that you are doing, which means you're not doing it as efficiently as you could be doing it, which is you're actually sabotaging yourself by time traveling. And we do this all the time. We start thinking about all the stuff that we have to do today or all the stuff we got to do this week instead of focusing on what we need to do right now and today or right now and in the moment. You cannot live the whole week on Tuesday. You can't live 4 p.m.'s work at 8 a.m. So wherever you are right now, handle the things that you need to do right there and right now, and don't keep your mind focused on what you're doing right now in the moment so that you can do that as best you can, then move to the next thing. When you can start focusing and doing things this way, just one thing at a time, focusing on one task in the moment and then moving to the next task, first of all, your brain won't feel fried anymore. Has any of you ever had that at the end of your day or late in the day or maybe midway through the day, depending on how much multitasking you catch yourself doing or how much time traveling you do? You ever feel like your brain is just fried? You feel like you've been working so much all day and your brain just needs a rest because it just feels overworked? That is not because your job is necessarily super stressful. It is not because you have, quote unquote, too much on your plate. It's because you are mentally trying to do more than one thing at a time. That's why your brain feels so damn tired, because you are overtaxing it, asking it to go past its own limitations. So I'm explaining to you again, and a limitation of the human brain that I need you to accept, that you can only do one thing at a time. You can only focus on one thing at a time. You can only think about really one thing at a time. So if you just handle it one thing at a time, your brain will be much more relaxed. You will have much more energy for each task that you address each day. And each task that you do address, you will do it that much better, that much more efficiently, meaning you will probably get it done faster and you'll actually have more time at the end of the day when you just focus on one thing at a time than when you, again, fool yourself into thinking you can do more than one thing at once. And every time that you try to do more than one thing at once and you do so successfully, you are actually making the situation worse because you're fooling yourself into believing that you are capable of quote unquote multitasking when again, there is no such thing as multitasking. It's kind of like in basketball, if I'm on a team and we're playing against a guy on the other team who we know is not a good outside shooter, but we also know that player thinks that they might be a good outside shooter, they just keep shooting outside shots even though they're not good at it. We want them to shoot a shot. We want them to shoot as many three-pointers as possible. And here's where they actually help us out is when they make one. Not when they keep missing, is when they actually make one early in the game, because now they will delude themselves into believing, oh, I can actually make these shots, and they're just going to keep shooting. And they'll actually eventually shoot their team out of the game. So the one success that they had doing something that they shouldn't even be doing is actually going to make them worse because they're going to keep trying it because they have fooled themselves into believing they're actually good at something that they're not good at. This is exactly what we do anytime we multitask successfully. And some of you have even used this phrase. You said it to yourself, you said it to others. You might even be thinking it right now. Oh, I can multitask. I'm good at multitasking. I can do more than one thing at a time. And you've done it in the past. And every time you do it, you're actually strengthening something that is making you weaker. You're strengthening the multitasking muscle, quote unquote, which doesn't actually exist, but it's actually making you worse. And it's setting you up rather for future overwhelm. So check yourself on that one. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is managing the grind. Routine and habit are good things. Routine and habit. Understanding that they can be monotonous, they can be tedious, they can be boring. Routine and habit are, and some people will say, and they're right, that they're the same thing over and over and over again. These are good things. You want routine and habit in your life as much as you can possibly put it in place. To handle the grind of life, of a career, of anything, you want to get used to doing the same things over and over again to the point that those things become habitual and routine, which means you don't need to think about them to actually do them. You become conditioned for doing them. Now, at this point, when you get conditioned for doing something, it becomes unconscious and you can just do it, again, based off of habit. It's the very definition of habit, the things that you do unconsciously and routinely. When you can do that, then you can go into what some people might think is multitasking, but it's not actually multitasking. For example, when you are, has any of you ever been in a car and you are driving the car while having a conversation at the same time? Whether you're having a conversation with someone on the phone, if you're talking to a passenger in your car. Has any of you ever done that before? Almost everybody who has a driver's license has done this. You have had a conversation while driving the car. Now, you might be saying, well, Dre, isn't that multitasking? You're doing two things at the same time. I say, on the contrary, it is not, because you don't need you don't need to give your conscious attention to the act of driving simply because you have the habit and the routine of driving. You've done it so many times, you can do it without having to consciously think about it. So you can put all your conscious focus on the conversation you're having while still operating the vehicle and stopping at the stop signs and not running over pedestrians. You can do that because it's become unconscious to you. So this is the freedom that you create when you have habits and routines in place, is that you can do things without having to think about them consciously, which frees you up to do the things that you do need to think about consciously. So this is why the more habits and routines you put in place, actually the more freedom you create for yourself and the more space you create for yourself to dedicate your attention and focus to stuff that really does need your thought. This is, I've mentioned before, how Steve Jobs, the Apple guru wizard who made Apple the company that it is, and was the brains behind the iPhone and the MacBooks and all this Apple stuff that we all have these days. He will wear the same clothes every day, not the exact same shirt, but he had a bunch of the same shirt and a bunch of the same pants that he would wear every day. And the reasoning was, according to him, he didn't want to use up any of his brain power making the decision about what clothes to wear. So he figured he would just wear the same clothes every day, got a bunch of the same shirt that he liked and a bunch of the same pants that he liked, and just wore the same stuff every day so he could save his brain energy for bigger problems, such as figuring out what kind of glass they need to put on this iPhone screen so that people could touch it and their fingers will slide on it and it will be responsive, and at the same time, if they dropped it, wouldn't break so easily. And I think we should all thank Steve Jobs for making that kind of decision. And why? And what am I illustrating here by telling you the story of Steve Jobs is that he created a habit and a routine about the way that he dressed so that it became unconscious, because he didn't have to constantly think about, well, what am I going to wear today? Because he only had one option. And thusly, he had more mental space to do the other things. So my question to you then is, and the question actually, this is a question that I'll hand to you and you can ask it to yourself, is where in your life, in your business, in your sport, in your job, can you create more habits and routines to where you are freeing up the mental space you used to use in that area, because now you have habits and routines in place. You don't need you don't need to use your mind on that one consciously as much anymore. Now you can use that freed up mental space, those resources, for something that's more important. So where can you free up some space? And then once you do free up the space, now what can you do with that freed up space? Some tasks and jobs and lifestyles include a grind as part of the deal. Actually, I've already told you, most of them include a grind as part of the deal, except maybe, I don't know, maybe being retired. Any of you who's retired and you don't have to wake up and do anything every day and you choose not to, maybe there's no grind involved in that. But what I heard is that actually starts to get boring if you don't have anything to do. Eventually, you don't have enough reason, you don't have a reason to wake up, eventually you don't. But most tasks, jobs, and lifestyles include a grind as part of the deal. So use the easiest possible tool for handling that grind, which is conditioning yourself to that grind, to the point that, again, the grind doesn't get any easier, but it feels easier and you don't even constantly have to think about it, simply because you created the conditioning in yourself and the habits and routines in place to where you handle it without even thinking about the fact that you're handling it. Let's recap today's class, which is handling or managing the grind. Understanding not every day is going to be smooth, fun, and seamless in anything you do. There will be days when you need to push, scrape, claw, and grind. Let's talk about how you handle them. Number one, when you have one of those days, understand nothing is wrong with you. Everybody goes through that. Don't beat yourself up about not feeling amazing every day, because everything is not going to be perfect and it's not supposed to be. That's why we have the concept of the third day. Point number two, doing one thing at a time. There will be rough days. Just remember that you live life one day at a time. You do one project at a time. Focus on where you are currently. Do what you need to do there, then move on to the next thing. A very simple concept, but a lot of people have trouble following it because of our big human brains. We time travel. We start thinking about what we need to do at 4 o'clock, but it's only 8 o'clock in the morning. What we need to do is focus on what we're doing at 8 o'clock and be where we are right now and handle things one at a time. You will be a lot more efficient. You'll have a lot more brain power at the end of the day, and you won't be stressing out or causing anxiety in your brain because you're not thinking about what's coming up. Instead, you're just focusing on where you are in the moment. It's very meditative in itself. And point number three, routine and habit are good things for you. To handle the grind, you want to get used to doing the same things over and over again to the point that they become habitual and routine, which means you don't need to think about them because you are conditioned for doing them. Every task, every job, and most lifestyles include some form of a grind. The best way to deal with that grind is not to beat yourself up over it. Again, not to time travel either. Is to condition yourself to handle it to where the work didn't get easier, but it feels a lot easier simply because you don't have to constantly think about it. You just do it. Now send me a text and tell me the best insight you got from today's class. My number is 305-384-6894. And if any of you out there is looking for someone who can help coach you, help hold you accountable, and help be a person that can be a sounding board and offer you advice and insights into how you can manage the grind or how you can even get into the grind. Maybe you're just trying to get into the game in a certain industry in your business and wherever you're going in your personal growth or professionally, you might be a good candidate for my 3rd-day mastermind, which is the only place that I offer any type of direct coaching or mentoring. You can apply to get on a call with me to where we can talk about where you're at and where you want to go and how I can help by going to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Just click the button right there on the site that says join the mastermind. It'll take you to a page to fill out a quick form and we'll send you a schedule. You'll be able to sign up for a call with me. We'll hop on Zoom and talk about what we need to talk about. Again, that's at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all day.